Maryland playing Purdue is one of the biggest games of the year for the Terps.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you for making us part of your day. And I'm also doing work at InsideBlackandGold.net. So make sure you guys head over to InsideBlackandGold.net for all your latest Terps news. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Maryland plays Purdue on a huge game on Sunday, and I think it's one of the biggest games of the season for the Terps. I think it's one of the best teams we'll play this year. Purdue basketball has just been really, really good over the last couple of years. I don't think they're nowhere. I don't want to say nowhere near as good as they were last year, but they're not the same team that they were last year. Last year was just impossible to match up against them because Zach Edey was an absolute menace down low in the post, and it was impossible to guard a guy like that. What was he, like 7'6"? They were a 1 seed in March Madness, a top 5 team for a lot of the year. They were a really challenging team in the Big Ten, and I think they had a really good team last year. I don't think they're quite that good this year. I do think they're good. I do think they're talented, but I don't think they're as good as they were last year. But this is still an absolutely humongous game for Maryland basketball. We're coming off feeling good after the Ohio State win where Maryland absolutely cracked Ohio State, and I don't think anybody saw that coming. The line for the game was like 5.5. It got up to 5.5. Maryland ended up beating Ohio State 83-59, outscoring them 50-17 in the first half. And now we're 8-1. And if we get past this Purdue game, things start looking really solid. And you look at the first, we're almost, 32 games in a year? We're almost a third of the way through. But if we beat Purdue, the next 3 games are all very, very winnable. And I think the Terps could end up winning all of the next 3 games. St. Francis, PA, that's an automatic win. Syracuse isn't that special this year. I don't think Syracuse basketball is that good this year. I watched them play once, and they didn't look that great right now. They've lost a lot of games. They got smacked by Tennessee, who's really good this year. They lost to Texas Tech. They lost to Texas. They've lost a lot of games. So I don't think I'm that concerned about that game. And then we play Maryland Eastern after that. So that's really 3 straight easy wins. And I don't want to say Syracuse is easy. That can be a weird one. But if you beat Ohio State, you have a chance, if you beat Purdue, who's currently ranked the 8th team in the country, then I think you have a really good opportunity to put yourself in a really good spot. And if we beat Purdue, what's our current record right now? I want to say it's 8-1, and so if we beat them, then we would move to 9-1, and then our next 3 games are very winnable. And you're looking at a 9-1 start that could turn into a really easy 12-1, and with some really solid wins. Nothing too crazy. Like, that's why I think Purdue is a really big game, because I don't think we have like a really good win yet. And when we start building our resume, and nobody can tell me this year this Maryland team's not a March Madness team. This team is better than a March Madness team. When I say that, I don't mean it's like a team that's a bubble team the entire year and gets in, finds a way to sneak in as like a 10 seed or a 9 or an 8 or something like that, or maybe even a 7, and they're on the bridge kind of the entire year. This is a team that could have a top five seed in the tournament. And I really believe that. And I think we're legit. But at the end of the day, to get a higher seeding, to be able to get where you want as a team, and in terms of later on in March, and to give yourself the best opportunity. And it's hard to go this far, but give yourself the best opportunity, not only in the first round, but to win the whole thing. I don't know what you guys have seen from this team, but I see a team that can win a national championship. And March Madness is so weird. There's so many different things that can happen. You really have no idea. You can lose in the first round if you're the best team in the tournament. You can make a run even if you're one of the lower seeder teams. Everybody knows that. That's the idea of March. Cinderella stories happen. But I think when you look at it, to give us the best opportunity to have a good seeding, and I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but I have that much confidence in this team. I think beating a Purdue team becomes really important. I think that if you lose this game, it's by no means the end of the world. By no means. The fact we just beat Ohio State and that Villanova win still looms large as well. I think that it's not a like must win for Maryland basketball, but I do think when you look at this Purdue team, they're the 8th ranked team in the country. They'll go down a little bit depending on how they play against us in the next poll. I also think it's going to be a lot harder to beat these guys than it was to beat Ohio State, obviously, but I think it's going to be a lot harder to beat this team than it was a couple of days ago because I don't know if you guys saw, but Purdue actually lost last night. I'm pretty sure it was yesterday. Yeah, they lost 70-81 to a Penn State team. That sounds like they have a good team this year. Sounds like Penn State is in a good spot. Sounds like they got some guys, and they lost 81-70. They lost by 11 to a Penn State team that's 8-1. That's unranked. That's looking kind of similar to us. I think a little bit underrated going into the year, but they have some really talented players like the Adrian Baldwin kid. He's a good player. We played him last year, but Penn State lost. So the reason I say it's going to be a lot harder to win that game is because a team like, Purdue lost. And the reason I say it's going to be a lot harder to beat a team like Purdue after a loss is just that's how a team like that's well coached, they're at home as well. I think that they're a team like that, teams like Purdue, when they lose a game to a team like Penn State or just a game in general, they're a lot harder to beat the next game. That's just the way it is. When you look at Purdue last year, they didn't take too many losses, but when they lost, they're quick. They're quick to rebound, but overall, they're just a tough team. We saw it. They rebounded after they lost to Marquette by almost 20 points. They absolutely demolished Marshall. They beat NC State and they beat Ole Miss. And this is a really good Purdue team. I don't want you guys to think this isn't a really good Purdue team. It's not as good as last year. I think Purdue fans will tell you that. But this is a good Purdue team. They have some big wins. Like I said, they beat Alabama, who looks like one of the best teams in the country. That has really talented guard play. They have one of the best players. That lefty point guard that Alabama has, I think, is one of the best players in the country. The Mark Sears kid. I think, and they beat Ole Miss. You think Ole Miss, you might think Jackson Dart, you might think their football team. But actually, Ole Miss basketball is a top 25 team this year, and they got some talent on that roster as well. And obviously, they just lost to Penn State, but you're not going to win every game in basketball. So I think it's a lot harder to beat Purdue coming off the loss. I think Maryland's very capable of still winning that game, but I do think it's going to be a lot harder, as well as Purdue's a tough place to play. The fact we have to travel there, that's not an easy place to go to on the road. I think that they're going to have a good crowd for the game. They're known to have pretty good basketball crowds. Like, this is their sport right now. This is what they're best at. And I think playing on the road against a Purdue team is a lot harder to win. But when I look through the Big Ten and I look at the teams that are ranked right now in the Big Ten, and a lot of things will fluctuate, a lot of things will change, this is one of our hardest games, one of the best teams will play in terms of ranking. And at the end of the day, that's what matters on the March Madness resume. There's some really good teams in the Big Ten right now. I think it's a little bit jumbled. I think there's not a clear favorite. And then I think after that, there's a tick down of some really good talented teams. Like Oregon's ranked top 15. Penn State probably will be a top 25 team. UCLA is a top 25 team. Michigan's actually really good. Michigan State, of course, always has a good team. So those are some of the teams that are good. Rutgers got those two talented freshmen. But when I look at it in terms of ranking, nobody's higher than where Purdue is. Oregon probably will be after after the weekend, depending on how Purdue plays against us. Hopefully we beat them so they don't get to balance out their Penn State loss. But when I talk about biggest games in terms of resume games, you don't get unlimited opportunities to get these types of wins, to get these top 10 wins, and you just get quad one wins in general. And I think the Terps have a really good chance at doing that on Saturday, but I think it's going to be a lot harder. Like I said, playing on the road, playing a team that came off a loss. It's a spot that, like Purdue, when you think of the storylines, you think Maryland just absolutely crushed Ohio State. You think Purdue just came off a bad loss. Those things usually are scary kind of to go together because you think, will Maryland come out overconfident, nonchalant, whatever the case is? I hope not, but you never really know with the Maryland basketball team. We're known to do some bad things. So we'll see what happens. I think it's going to be a really good back and forth game. I'll get into some predictions, some of the matchups after this. I love a great deal as much as the next guy, but I'm not going to crawl through a bed of hot coals just to save a few bucks. It has to be easy. No hoops, no BS. So when Mint Mobile said it was easy to get a wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan, I called them on it. It turns out it really is that easy to get wireless for $15 a month. The longest part of the process was the time you spent waiting to break up with your old provider. Whatever your old provider is, that's the longest part of the process with Mint Mobile. So to get started, go to mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. There you'll see that right now all 3-month plans are only $15 a month, including the unlimited plan. All plans come with the highest speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts. Find out how easy it is to switch to Mint Mobile and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month wireless plan, for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. That's mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. $45 upfront payment required. New customers on the first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 GB on unlimited plan. Additional taxes and fees and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. I think that the guard play is going to be extremely important going into this game against Purdue. They got some guys, they got some dudes, and they have some experience. It's not like a bunch of just freshmen running around. Uh, their top guys are older guys that have been there, that are really talented guys that have been there for the last couple of years, where they've had really good teams. They're an experienced team, and that's one thing I think Purdue has over us a little bit. I think this Maryland team has a lot of experience. I just think the Maryland team has a different type of experience. We have a lot of transfers, so it's experience in other places. But a lot of these guys have been at Purdue. But I think the guard matchup is going to be really important in this game and really could decide how this game goes. I think here's what I'll say about the guard matchup. Braden Smith for Purdue is right now third on their team in points at 12 points per game. But he averages 9 assists per game. I think that he's the best passer in the Big Ten. I think he's really great at getting their team going. He's a playmaker. I think he was preseason Big Ten Player of the Year for a lot of different people. But I don't know if he's quite going to be that. I think he's got to score a little bit more, but he's still, I think, arguably their best player, even though in terms of the points, he's third on their team. I still think he's what gets their team going. The one thing I think that's going to be key is whoever guards Braden Smith, which I guess will be Gillespie, you can turn this kid over. It's not like he's one of those kids with a really high assist to turnover ratio. He'll turn it over. He averages the most turnovers on his team at almost 2.6. So I think a key to this game possibly is turning over Braden Smith. Like I said, preseason Big Ten Player of the Year in a lot of people's books. I think he's a tad overrated. I do. He's small though, so I think that Jacoby Gillespie's a good matchup for him because we know Gillespie's a little bit undersized as well, and I think that Gillespie, Rice, and Miguel are a really key matchup against Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, and Miles Colvin, who are their three guards that are good, solid, talented guard plays. I think here's what I have to say. I think Fletcher Lawyer is their best shooter by far. I think he's one of the best shooters in the Big Ten, if not the best shooter. And one of the matchups is seeing, I think him versus Rodney Rice. Rodney Rice went 0 for 6 last game from the 3-point line, and we didn't need it. I don't know if that's going to be the same case against Purdue. We may actually need Rodney Rice to get going from the 3-point line and actually hit some shots. But I trust Rodney Rice to turn it on. I think he's I think he's our best shooter. Everyone's gonna have bad days, but I'm telling you that matchup between Lawyer and Rice is really important because they're both really high volume scorers and shooters. Lawyer's shooting 54.5% from three, and he gets a good amount of them up. So the fact that he's shooting such a high percentage shows kind of how they are as a team, and their team's a really good shooting team overall. I think that that's something that is definitely important and something that a lot of people are going to look at. I do think Maryland has the advantage down low. Purdue's interesting this year. Like I said, they don't have Zach Edey, but their leading scorer right now is their four-man Trey Kaufman Wren, who's actually been really good this year for Purdue, who's a four guy. That'll be Derek Queen's matchup. I'll take Derek Queen, to be honest. I think that Trey Kaufman Wren is a good player, and I think he's done some good things. But I'll take Derek Queen. He's also turning over the ball 2.4 times a game, but he gets a lot of touches and everything. But I think Derek Queen's going to outplay him, and I think that's going to be one of the biggest parts of the game. I just think that's why I think Derek Queen and Julian Reese down low can't really be guarded by Trey Kaufman Wren. And then they have this huge freshman, Daniel Jacobson, who's going to probably be on Reese. He's 7'4", but it's not a Zach Edey 7'4". Like it's 7'4", but the 7'4" that doesn't impact the game as much. If you know what I mean. Like he's averaging 6.5 points a game, but he's only getting 3.5 rebounds a game. And he's actually not getting that many minutes a game. So I'm not too concerned about that. And I think Julian Reese, when he's out of the game, or Queen can really, again, flourish inside. I really believe that. But I do think this is a guards game against Purdue, and I think they're going to want to make it into that. But I think Gillespie and Braden Smith match up well. I know Braden Smith is a really good playmaker and all that stuff, but I don't think like he's that much better than Jacoby Gillespie. And same thing with Rodney Rice and Fletcher Lawyer. Now, the big X factor of the game, I think, is Tafari Gapari coming off the bench again. If he continues to put up minutes and the production that he has, this Maryland team can really is going to be a really, really tough out if they have that bench production from Tafari Gapari, as well as Deshaun Harris-Smith if he can get going a little bit. If we don't, I don't think it's going to be the end of the world. I do think it'll hurt because we got like 12 points for him last game against Ohio State, and he's also shooting the three ball well, and he brings in a new type of offense when he comes in because it's more 4-round-1, and he's a really good defender. He's an athletic specimen. If he continues to play the way he has, I think we look pretty good so far. Maryland football is losing a lot of guys to the NFL, and the portal has opened. What should they look at? Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get 115 bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sports app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get the hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-plays, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5. bet. There's so many different things you can bet on. Purdue versus Maryland this weekend, if you want to bet on that, or any other college basketball, you can do that on FanDuel. There's a great slate of NFL games. I think the college football conference championships are on Saturday, and that's super exciting. So you guys can do that all over on FanDuel. And of course, NBA has games almost every single day. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So Maryland football has honestly taken huge hits. It's expected hits, but there are so many holes on this roster right now, even more than we had last year, obviously, because we haven't addressed it in the portal. Maryland and Mike Locksley need to hit the portal hard. Like, when I look at position groups and when I look at where Maryland football needs to make address things in the portal, it's pretty much every single position group. We already lost. What was the strength of our team last year? The receiving core. I think a lot of people would agree with that. I think that was the best part of our team. And we lost our two best players at the receiver position. And right now, receiver switches from being our best position to, I really don't know. Sure, we have some young guys that are talented, that are good, but still, I really don't know what that receiver position is going to look like for next year. And that's losing Ty Feldman and Caden Prather. You have to get into the portal. And Mike Locksley's been good at this, going into the portal and getting talented receivers. I'm not too overly concerned about that, but I do think that that's something that is important. It's been the strength of our team. We love to throw the ball. And now I don't see any alphas in that receiver room. I see a couple guys like Taven Smith, Shalik Knotts, Manning, some guys that could step up, but I think you need to get guys in the portal. I think offensive line, we've talked about it a ton. It was the worst in the Big Ten last year. It was one of the worst in all of Power Fives or Power Fours. It was horrible last year, and it can't be every single year you bring in 5 new starters out of the portal. But I do think there's no other way to do it besides get some guys in the portal for sure. You got to get at least 2. It's got to be like a couple of really like good guys. It can't just be some mediocre, like played Division II, is making the jump, played really well there, but hasn't played Big Ten ball. We need somebody that's transferring that it's not always like there's not a clear problem with them, and that's not easy to get. And I doubt we really honestly get one of those guys. But I just think that when we look at Malik Washington and everything and his future as a player, you want guys that can protect him. And if we don't get offensive linemen in the portal and the high-level one, it's going to be tough. And I think we have young guys, Howerton, Terez Davis, Hershey. They're going to be good future players on the offensive line, but you still want to fill it out with the most amount of talent that we can get there. And then you move on to the defense side of things. And that's where I say there's not a position group that like we wouldn't want to add somebody. Defensive line, you lose a King Basote. You lose a King Basote inside, which absolutely really hurts your team a lot. And then you also lose Jordan Phillips inside, which hurts too. And you lose both of those guys. Those were your best guys on your defensive line on the interior, and you absolutely get disintegrated there. And now all of a sudden you don't have guys in the defensive line group that you feel really good about to stop the run on the inside. And you need to get guys there, and that's not an easy spot in the portal to get high-level players. And let me tell you, if we can't stop the run, those two guys are pretty good, and they're not going to be easy to replace. And those guys both are going off to the NFL. We'll see what happens with that. And then another strength of our team, maybe the safeties, Dante and Glendon, both off to the NFL, and Brandon Jacobs hit the transfer portal. So that's another position group that you're looking at now, and you're saying Maryland's going to have to do something about the safety. Messiah Delhome's talented, but how much does he play as a freshman? I don't know. The corner room was terrible last year, the entire year, so you probably want to make changes there as well and bring in some guys. I just think that this roster is depleted right now. There's a really talented freshman class, which we absolutely need, but how much can you expect those guys to contribute? I don't know. I do know this, though. Mike Locksley is going to have to be huge in the portal and make some big moves. I don't know exactly how he's going to do it. I don't know who he's going to be able to get, but I do think that Maryland and Mike Locksley are going to have to be able to do some things, get some NIL money, get some donations. whatever you have to do. I don't know exactly, but right now you got to figure it out because this roster does not look great. That's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Locked On Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you for listening to Locked On Terps.